I think she's getting it.
We are now.
No, we are now. Okay, perfect. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the City of Salem and Salem URA Finance Committee for May 18th, 2026. I am sitting in for Chair Deanna Gwynn. I'm Mayor Julie Hoy.
Shane Matthews.
Deanna Gwynn.
Perfect. And Councilor Nishioka is here also. And we will, I need a motion for approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion and second by Gwen. Any discussion on anything on the minutes? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Moving on to anybody for public comment?
Not today.
Not today. Moving on to action items. We have nothing. Why are we here? Management update, information items, homelessness and key performance indicators update.
Mayor, thank you. I think that's me. Counselors, can you hear me okay online or should I scoot closer?
I think I can hear you okay.
Okay, very good. Well, I am providing a report back from a previous meeting. You might remember as part of your broader performance management strategy, one of the offshoots of the study on homelessness was a look at what key performance indicators we can identify so we can communicate to the community what we're doing and what our data is, how it reflects that. And so we came back in September to the Finance Committee and we provided the report. And at that time, Finance Committee members suggested several looks to see or several changes. Oh, Councilor Tigan, we want to welcome you in. Good to see you.
Sorry to be late.
And so I'm here to report back on those suggestions from the last meeting. The first suggestion was, can we report on the spend on city expenditures related to this topic? And we've added that. What we would do is grab the precise specialized teams that work in this area and be able to produce the cost related to those teams. There was a question about accountability and more specifically, can we capture data related to enforcement of code violations? And we can, both in the fire department and in the police department, there are code violations that occur and that we can begin to report on those. So we were able to add that. The fire department, there was also general interest in capturing the work done in that department. Really grateful to see Chief both on the call today. As you know, they're doing really terrific work and they've been a lovely addition, a really impactful addition with the REACH program into our work. And so yes, we certainly can. In fact, the fire department reports at a quicker cadence than what we have proposed, but I proposed it at the level that was consistent across the departments, but they do it even more frequent. So yes, we were able to do that. There was also an interest in longitudinal data. Can we identify trends over time? That will build as we publish the dashboard. We'll begin to be able to see looks forward and we can do things year over year and compare data, but we don't have that data just yet. But we'll build this with that objective in mind. And the second year we'll put in comparison to the first year. So I wanted you to know that we listened to the ideas and were able to make those changes. I know there was a more robust conversation that day than what I've captured here, but wanted to hit those highlights and then see what kinds of questions or discussion the group may have. You know, I don't have, other than what's in your packet with my memo and then the draft key performance indicators, I didn't load anything else. Back in September, you had a little bit of a more complete report. If there's no other feedback today, we're gonna take the next steps towards building an outward facing dashboard and start publishing that data so that you have it to reference, to review the work and to engage with your constituents on the data as well.
Thank you for that.
Of course.
Does anyone have any questions? Do you need another minute? No, Paul? Counselor Gwynn, any questions? Counselor Matthews? Okay. Seeing none.
Copy that. Thank you. We'll get to work. We appreciate the directions.
Thank you.
I think Counselor Matthews does need to drop off if we're okay without him now. If we have a quorum. We're good with that? Okay, thanks Shane.
Thanks,
Jumping in.
everyone. Have a good one.
Okay, request for proposal for financial auditing services discussion.
Thank you. I sent an email out, I think it was at the tail end of April, with the 3 RFP proposals we received from 3 different companies for the financial auditing services for the city, the urban renewal agency, and the convention center. Hopefully you had a chance to review those. If not, it's not quite the end of the world, but we're gonna have a discussion about those 3 proposals today. If you haven't filled out your conflict of interest form, please get that back to purchasing.
Did you get that, Counselor Tigan and Counselor Gwynn?
Yeah, I've turned mine in. Yep.
I will turn mine in. I have not.
Thank you.
Perfect. So we received 3 proposals, which was actually pretty impressive. The current environment for government auditing is pretty sparse. So I'm on calls pretty often with other government agencies where they do an RFP and they don't get any responses. So I think we're very fortunate to receive 3 very highly qualified firms. I haven't worked with all 3, but I'm familiar with all 3. And in fact, one of the proposals who we don't work with currently has personnel that are previous with our current auditor. So it's a pretty small world in government auditing. So what we're hoping to do is talk through the proposals. If you had any questions, if you had any thoughts about their qualifications or which direction, and then what we're going to be looking for after the meeting is to get your scoring back on the 3 proposals. We'll pull those together. We'll score them, and then we'll get out an intent to award for the highest scoring proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Any process questions?
Counselor Tigan, Counselor Gwynn?
No, not for me. I was able to review all the proposals and do my own scoring, but just didn't submit those until we have the conversation as a committee.
Yeah, perfectly appropriate. I mean, that's the general process for these. And generally we don't share the scoring with the other committee members. You can keep your score yourselves. If through discussion you want to modify your score, that's fine. But then at the end, we'll collect all of those. Counselor Tigan, did you have any questions on any of the proposals?
The only question that stood out to me, as other than just having a conversation about the merits of them, was, and this may be a relatively minor thing considering how they build teams on these auditing, within these auditing firms, but on the Singer LUAC proposal, one of their senior managers, I think his name was Fierce Katok, it said that he had his municipal auditor license was listed as pending but not yet issued. And that just seemed something worth looking at, I think, but also that person had been auditing other organizations. So I just wasn't quite sure how to read that.
Yeah, good question. Jeremy, do you have any insight into that?
I think in order to comply with the Oregon, the municipal audit standards, just one partner who's basically signing off on the audit, they only need the one. So
okay.
So they're good. We do have we have had in the past basically 1 or 2 partners that are either signing off or doing a QC, like a quality control review of be the only ones with a municipal license that I know of anyway. So there's definitely other staff that are working on it that are not licensed in Oregon. I mean, they have their CPA license, but they haven't, totally completed the Oregon municipal audit license. So.
It's probably not uncommon to have someone with a lesser
Right.
accreditation do some of the groundwork.
Yes, exactly. There's even some staff that don't have their CPAs, actual CPA certificates either. So yeah, that's not unusual for the junior staff.
Yeah, and it's quite common for those kind of certifications. In order to get them, you have to work under someone with that certification for a certain amount of time. So it's extremely common for, to start at a lower level and work toward that.
Right.
But as long as there's someone with the municipal auditor license on staff that's actually signing off on the audit, we're covered according to the state requirement.
Okay.
Great job noticing.
Yeah, sure. The other thing I was thinking that I kind of had a question about now that I think about it, for the Ede Bailey proposal, at the end of that one, there was just like a bunch, there was like 3 paragraphs of italics where they kind of said, well, this looks like a pretty good RFP, but there's some things we want to negotiate about it, is sort of my short TLDR way of describing it. And so I didn't know if that language stood out to the city staff as something that was worth noting, considering, I mean, they beat everyone else out on price, but then kind of said towards the end of their proposal that they had some things that wanted to
Wiggle room.
still negotiate, or I'm not sure. I'm working off of memory.
Yeah, I did notice that. I don't know, Jeremy, are you familiar with kind of that being in the proposal? Do we get a lot of attempt to negotiation after?
You go back through all the rest of it again, but I think in the RFP, we say that we own all of their working papers, which is a little bit, I think they probably just want to make sure to set the kind of, I don't know what to say, the line between their papers and our papers, is that where they're comfortable with, rather than basically saying everything that they work on and mark up and notes and everything would be ours and publicly disclosable. So that's just my thought.
Yeah, so what I would expect is there to be some like limited negotiation, but I think generally the things that we want to make sure we're able to hold them to are, the timeline, the fees, that kind of thing. But if there's specific instances where, this is a hard line, we'd probably, if it was a non-negotiable on the city side, we'd have to move on to the next proposal if they're not able to agree to the contract.
Okay, yeah, it was things like indemnification clauses and stuff like that. So I just don't have a great sense of the city's perspective on those to know whether or not that's as big of a deal as it might seem, or less of a deal than it might seem. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's not a huge red flag, at least to me.
Okay.
I mean, it's common for us to negotiate during the contracting phase. So some of the city's contracts have a lot of standard language, and then there are other things that are negotiated. So we work through all that in the contracting phase.
Yeah, it's pretty rare we're just able to attach the RFP and, sign it and be done, so.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Just those are things that kind of stood out to me to ask questions on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I did not have any questions.
Councilor Nishioka, did you review these RFPs?
They were not sent to me.
Okay, so nothing's coming up for you. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little unique since the finance committee is serving as the RFP committee, the proposals are actually confidential, so we're not able to share those as part of the public record.
Okay.
But once we actually award, we'll.
Let that back. Was there anything on any of staff's part that you noticed or liked or didn't?
Jeremy?
Honestly, I felt like they were probably pretty equally qualified. There's two of them that have local staff, but that may or may not necessarily count for a tremendous amount to the committee, so, sure.
Yeah, I had the same thought, you know, when reviewing the proposals, they seem fairly, you know, highly qualified firms. I'm sure they could all do the work. I think there is some small benefit for having local staff, but at the same time, we've gotten a lot more remote the last several years with the audit engagements. So like even our current auditors, they'll plan to be on site for a week and they're here for, you know, 2 or 3 days instead. And a lot more of our stuff is available, you know, virtually or over the cloud. So I don't see it as a huge driver in the decision.
I know I'm not supposed to basically talk. I would just say that when you talk to the other committee members, just make sure that they understand if the scope has changed or, you know, like if anything has changed for the audit.
I mean, like what they're considering or?
Yeah, if the scope is changing in any way from previous ones and if it's getting harder to find auditors.
I mean, that's why I'm actually surprised we got 3 proposals because generally it has been much more challenging to find auditors. We actually see firms that are backing away from municipal auditing. They're just doing consulting or something like that. But I think we're pretty, you know, the service that we're asking for in the RFP is very similar to our current service we're receiving.
Is there any reason firms would be drawn to Salem?
It's a large contract. So I think that would be one of the things. So if you look at the references, if you look at the other you know, clients, you know, we're likely one of the largest if you look at their portfolios. And that's just due to the space. You know, there aren't that many large municipal agencies. It's us, Eugene, you know, Metro, you know, City of Portland is a little bit different. Maybe some large, you know, TriMet, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say the kind of thing that I noticed in terms of, just to kind of pick up the discussion, I suppose, definitely that you have these 2 that are at least based in Salem or have Salem located staff, REDW and Singer Luick, and the Eid Bailey one, I think I'm pronouncing these names right, I have no idea. The Eid Bailey one, while it's lower in price, I think maybe to your point, Josh, they also don't have any current Oregon municipal clients. And so they had, you know, when I saw on their reference page, some community colleges, they have some public institutions in Oregon, but I didn't see any state of Oregon municipal clients. They have lots of California clients being California based. So that felt important to me after the last conversation we had with the auditor, just in terms of it seemed like having a familiarity with the unique setup of Oregon's municipalities mattered quite a bit. There's probably a learning curve there, which I think their pricing seemed to reflect a little bit. But yeah, overall, it felt like the 2 that had more, not necessarily Salem presence is what mattered, but the others, Singer Luick and REDW, had either a direct connection to Salem at some point in the past, either recently or before that merger that both of them talk about, or they're working with other Oregon municipalities.
I was actually surprised because if you look at I don't know how to pronounce it either, and I've met them, so I feel bad about that. But Eid Bailey, you know, if you look, you know, they have an asterisk about former clients that are, you know, cities, and that kind of surprised me that there wasn't more cities they were engaged with. So I don't know if that's intentional on their part or if just that's how the contract cycle went. Yeah, I think if they were chosen, we'd do reference checks and, you know, do some due diligence there to see kind of what happened.
Yeah, I think then the Eid Bailey one say they had Springfield as a client, as one of their former clients, but they don't anymore. And then, yeah, City of Springfield, and I think it's Singer Luick that now has Springfield as their client. So,
Yeah.
contracts come and go, and auditing committees like our own make different decisions, but it says something, I suppose.
Yeah, agreed. They do have, I mean, community colleges, are quite a bit different, but a lot of the rules are the same as far as like the auditing piece. So they do still have an Oregon presence, just no city municipalities, which is, I think, interesting, not super concerning. I'd be interested to, talk to them and figure out, what happened there.
So what point do you want us to get to today?
So this is kind of just the committee discussion. So if there's nothing further, what we'd be looking for is for people to complete their scoring matrix. And you'd send them back to me, then we compile it, make sure there's a clear winner, then we go through the next steps to award.
Okay.
So no formal action required. This is just the committee. It is kind of an interesting process. Usually this is a very staff-driven process, but I think it was, I don't know, 11 years ago, Dan, something like that. We had a new council policy for the finance committee to serve as the RFP committee for the selection of the auditor.
I think one thing that's hard for us as a selection committee to fully understand is how these proposals, what they tell you about your interaction with them. They're going to interact with us. I don't know, maybe we talk to them at the start and they give us the report at the end. I'm not sure. I remember
exactly
talking,
right. Yeah.
but they talk to you a lot. And so I felt like there were some significant differences in the amount of detail given on their interaction with the staff, when they would be doing the work, how much time would be expected of staff to participate. And so I'm curious, as part of your team's feedback in terms of which schedules made sense to you or would work with what you were expecting in terms of detail given and things like that.
Yeah, really good question. Jeremy, you want to speak to the scheduling piece? If there's any challenges there?
They all seem to be pretty open that they could get started right away, I recall, so feel terribly concerned about timeline.
Yeah, I think the biggest change, I think, is there's always a learning curve, right? When you're working with a new client or us with a new auditor, right? So like for sure, if REDW was selected, there would be less of a learning curve, less of a onboarding.
Get to know you.
Yeah, get to know you phase, probably less hours, quite honestly, in the beginning. But I didn't see anything super concerning about schedules. For the accounting group, after July 1st, the big focus is on getting ready for this audit and going through it. So there's not, a lot of the other work, there's certainly some structure around daily work, but otherwise, within kind of that 6-month period, we can kind of flex to whatever schedule is necessary.
I guess for my other committee members, the thing that kind of stood out to me is that REDW, which has the most understanding of the city at this point, because they are our current auditor, gave us the most in-depth schedule, and it was clearly reflecting that they knew what it was going to take. Whereas Eid Bailey, which has the least understanding of what the city's up to, they're the furthest away, they have the least current experience in Oregon municipalities. They gave us just the most general idea of what they'd be up to. So it feels like that learning curve that Josh is talking about would be more significant. Now Eat Bailey is better on price. But I also like, I don't know what to think about, it also kind of feels like they're using this as a way to understand, it'll be beneficial to them as a company to understand municipal auditing through this contract, but that's not necessarily my interest, is giving them a testing ground. I want someone who knows what they're doing.
We had an accountant like that once at the restaurant.
Once, I think, was the key word in that
Yes.
phrase.
You know, I like the sounds of less time. It just makes me wonder, does this committee in the last 11 years often have the opportunity to go through this process? Or is this, how often does this happen?
Every 5 years.
Every 5, okay. Personally, I like the idea of saving time in terms of onboarding and making sure we're gonna get what we know we need. Rather than, like you said, Paul, sort of giving someone the opportunity to grow in their abilities.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is a very professional outfit, so I don't want to like insult them, but there's still a learning curve. Sorry, Deanna.
Oh, no worries. Josh, I was just curious, how long have we worked with REDW and or their affiliate or Ryan specifically prior to their merger? And I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I'm gonna disconnect a couple things there. So Grove Mueller Swank was acquired by RDW. We've been working with that group for, this is 10 years, right? Prior to that, we were with Marina, who's no longer accepting municipal clients. I will say, prior to Ryan, we were working with Kathleen, who's one of the principals for the other proposal.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of familiarity there too with, I'm blanking on the name of it. The singer Lee Work, there is some Salem familiarity there just because one of their main people used to work for Grove Mueller Swank while they were engaged with the city. So 10 years with the current audit firm. And then we had 5 years of a different company, and then prior to that, we were with Grove Mueller Swank for quite a number of years, right?
At least
At least 10.
Any other questions or thoughts?
I'm just kind of going through my notes, Madam Mayor. I mean, I think the things that have stood out to me, I've shared. I mean, as the city staff note, that these are all capable organizations.
Now that we've talked a little bit about familiarity and that, I find myself going, oh, wait a minute, would it be better to have fresh eyes? You know, and a new look rather than that continuity of relationship. Any thoughts on that, Councillor Glenn or Councillor Tigan?
I mean, I appreciate you saying that, and it's something that we kind of talked with Ryan about when he gave his last report, right? We were like, what usually comes up here? I mean, this is just we're paying money to get a clean bill of health. You know, what are we doing to really look under the hood? And I don't want to say there's a box checking element to this, but they're not doing the kind of auditing work that, you know, we're asking Baker Tilly to do, right? Where they really examine the operations of a sub part of the organization and tell us what's working and what's not. It's, you know, this is a different type of audit. So yeah, I don't know. I think just as someone who's been on this committee for less than a year or a year, a little bit more than a year, still trying to understand the full scope of the work that they would be doing. But yeah, I don't know if a fresh pair of eyes is something that we want to prioritize. I think there's ways to capture that in your scoring.
City manager have anything to offer? Josh, I was actually kind of, you were quiet, and what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm actually, you know, it's an interesting question, you know, fresh set of eyes or familiarity. I think both have their advantages, and I'm really not opposed to either direction. I think your scoring should reflect, you know, what you think the qualifications are. So I think it's really up to you guys. I think from our side, I think we're comfortable with, you know, any of these three firms actually, just at a high level. So I think it comes down to, you know, nuances of fees, you know, preferences within the scoring, that kind of thing.
There are a lot of things that are prescribed in this work. So any firm you pick is going to be doing those same activities or similar activities because they're required to do that for the audit process.
Yeah. So it's like when you said, you know, checking the box, there is a lot of checking the box. It's like, oh, did they publish this notice for the budget public hearing, right?
Yeah.
That's a literal box they're gonna check. Plus, you know, probably a couple thousand more. So some things it is, you know, just, hey, did they do this or didn't they? And they examine specific areas. It's not programmatic necessarily, you know, but extreme focus on the internal controls, making sure things are costed to the right period. You know, there's, you know, tons of document examinations, you know, with invoices. So very different than what Baker Tilly is doing for us. That arm of Baker Tilly, because they do have a different auditing arm.
Right.
Yeah, but still a significant level of work. So I don't want to discount it where they're just, you know, hey, looks good, you know, checking the box. You know, there's an intensive process that takes months for them to work through.
So as we kind of go through it, I think it's important to also publicly talk about what we're trying to get out of it, right? Because of the money that we're spending. And also that is to create that the confidence with the public also that we are doing everything the way it should be, right? But I think it's important to talk about why we are doing it and what we're trying to accomplish through this. Because otherwise it is a lot of money that is spent. How much?
If there was a range, I don't know, 110 to 140, something like that.
And then if a company like an eBailey, if that's saying it right, is gaining experience, is that at our expense, or they just promise to provide the information required, and then however much time it takes them to do the work is on them?
So it depends, even in our current contract, if there's an intensive additional government accounting standard board pronouncement that we're having to go follow through on, and there's a lot more hours attributed to the audit, there might be additional charges. So there are ways the firms protect themselves if there's something outside of their control, either on our side or from just the nature of the work that expands it, that might increase the scope of what we're paying. But there's going to be something clear that happens that would cause that to trigger.
And did you want Josh to say out loud, what is the scope of the work in this meeting?
Well, and then we are required to, I mean, the state of Oregon, we have to be audited. If we're not able to find an auditor, the state will do it themselves, which we don't want that. Because the timelines are a lot different. That's actually a huge issue up in Washington, where the state of Washington audits all municipalities, and they're way behind. So it's impacting a lot of cities' bond ratings and other other things. So here we're fortunate to be able to select our own auditor. We're fortunate to have 3 proposals. We do have to do this work. I think it not only protects the city, it also gives some assurance to residents of our accountability that we're following all the rules.
I think to the mayor's point, though, I kind of wonder how you read that statement in the Eid Bailey proposal. They have on page 23, they have this sort of sidebar that says it's called smooth transition, which sounds nice. But in it, they say first year investment, manage the first year audit to minimize time demands and ensure a timely audit. We know the first year hours will be 10 to 15% higher and believe these hours are an investment in a multi-year engagement. So do you think that the number they gave us includes that premium, that 10 to 15% premium, even though it doesn't? I just couldn't figure out exactly what they were saying there.
Yeah, so I think based on the response, I think they're including that as part of their RFP, that they know this is going to be an additional effort and they're willing to absorb that as part of the contract. I think what I expected to see is actually the price to be a lot higher for the first year for the 2 proposals that we don't already work with, and we didn't really see that. It felt pretty smooth. So I think they're making that investment in, hey, we're going to spend that 15% extra and we'll absorb it within the current fee. But we would work that out with them after we get to contracting, just to make sure we have a clear understanding with them.
Okay.
So the process goes, we move from this point, we finish our scoring.
Right.
And then?
So we finish the scoring. We would do an intent to award, check references, that kind of thing, and hopefully move into contracting.
And then does it come to council
It
at
does
all?
not.
So we're just done.
No, so this one's actually pretty unique. So the finance committee serves as the RFP committee. This is usually a staff process. Sometimes we bring in outside people, but usually a staff process. And then we provide notice to the companies that submitted a proposal of our intent to award. And then if there's no protest, we generally award and go through contracting. The timely piece for this one is we want to have this on the agenda for this meeting because we have to start kind of the pre-audit work. And depending on who's chosen, that can look a little bit different. So we want to start having those conversations. So if I may, I think after this meeting, if you could get us your scores, by Wednesday, if that's a possibility, into day Wednesday. If you need more time, that's okay. Just let us know. We just want to be able to keep it moving along.
Yeah. I'm starting to like the sounds of a fresh look. Just to see how it goes. I mean, yeah. You're still gonna get your award, right? I mean, don't you give them an award?
That's the hope, yes. Hey, I will say the one added thing, and we did talk about this in the RFP, is we're planning to go live with a new ERP system August 1st. So like this first year is going to be based on everything current in our current system, but it's in any auditor, it's going to be an interesting second year, I think. That may trigger some interesting things just with the transition there.
Wow.
Yeah, when I think about it and these different areas that you've asked us to score and just the overall feel of it, I don't disagree, Madam Mayor, that having a fresh set of eyes is valuable, and 2 out of the 3 choices give us that. And really the Eid Bailey one is very fresh since no one on their team has really ever interacted with Salem. And maybe this is just like my own professional bias. Eid Bailey feels like a lot bigger company, and it feels like they have the overhead space to come in and crowd out a smaller organization. And so that part when they say, oh, we'll just eat 15% of our cost in order in the first year to win the contract. It just feels like the thing a large company would do to throw their weight around and outcompete smaller firms. So I'm not sure if that's one of the things we can judge this on, but I'll just say that was kind of my read in their proposal.
Well, and I like keeping local business local too, personally.
And that would be majority REDW.
I mean, the Singer LEWAC, they have a local office too, right?
Right.
Just like REW, they have a local office. They aren't a national firm. You know, they have clients everywhere. But I think the same is true for all three of these.
Yeah.
I just meant I lean towards the two that have more of the local connection.
Excellent points. So, move forward,
Yes,
get our scoring done.
yes, please.
This is how we do it.
I will send a reminder in a couple days, just so you guys have something in your inbox.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Wow, seems like a big deal. Anything further, anybody? If not, we'll move on.
Good on that one. Thank you. And can I just apologize for not being there at 3:30? I have it cemented in my mind that this meeting starts at 4 o'clock. And so I am really sorry for not being here on time.
Yeah, I apologize. Just given what was on the agenda, we wanted to expand it just in case. Apologies for that. I did send a reminder earlier today and then with the appointment change, but I think we have to stick to 4 o'clock just to, you know,
Well,
make sure it's.
I did the same thing, Counselor Tigan.
if
Okay.
it makes you guys feel better, Shane Matthews was late, but he wasn't supposed to be here at all. So,
Wow. We are a highly effective organization, I believe is the technical term for it.
yes, absolutely. All
Get
right.
what you pay for.
Get what you pay for. All right, so moving on then to the fiscal year 2026 Q3 quarterly investment update.
Thank you. It is provided in the agenda. It is a long document. I know we've talked about this a couple times, and we do plan to bring our investment advisor to the finance committee at a future date. Our main point of contact actually just retired from PFM, our investment advisor. So my intent is to work with the new person a little bit and then bring him back here probably for the next quarter or the one after that, just so we can get on the same page about our specific investment portfolio.
Is that person local?
PFM, I don't think so.
I think the main rep is maybe on the previous ones have been.
A lot of times those ones aren't local, they're larger firms. But any questions on the investment report ending March 31st, 2026?
It's highly entertaining. I love the color.
I mean, I always love reading their outlook on, you know, the general investment look, you know, across the country and internationally. And, you know, there's so much uncertainty, like maybe, I don't know, and this is a budget committee thing too, just in terms of how we're trying to understand what our fuel consumption looks like. If we're making up for that in investments in, I don't think so, but it certainly seems like something to consider from a finance committee standpoint. Is just when it comes to actual spending, what the impact of, you know, I don't think higher fuel costs are going away for a while. If people thought we were going to get out of it quickly, that doesn't seem to be realistic. So it just seems like a question worth flagging.
Yeah, appreciate that. And I think we can, maybe we'll peg that for a future meeting, just looking at, you know, fuel usage and cost escalation. I think I mentioned at the budget committee, you know, we hold departments, you know, harmless basically from fluctuations and try to absorb those, you know, just to give budget certainty for different funds. That's not gonna hold out, you know, if we continue to see these high prices, so we can bring back some information just to give an update there, because it's probably the most, if you look at all our inflationary trends besides personnel, that's probably one of the most impactful ones.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anything you want to point out that you find most fascinating?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. Anything else on it? You guys want a minute to look or? Moving on, we got another meeting in like 25 minutes. Right?
We don't have.
We have a dinner date in 25 minutes, but I think then we have a meeting at 6.
I was wondering about that, whether it would be easier for all of you, for us to host finance committee in the library.
Because
Because,
it's gonna be on a work
because
session.
work sessions start at 6 on most of these days.
City council is always at 6.
Yeah, but dinner's at 5.
Today is, finance committee, I think, meets on work session nights. So I was wondering if it would be more convenient to be in one place, or if
Oh,
you
I
like
don't
doing the
know.
dash.
Can we think about that?
Yeah.
I just think about, you know, being remote is pretty sweet. Because then you can hang where you're at and then get to the next thing.
Well, when I remember when the meeting starts and I put it on my calendar and I show up, I don't mind going to the two places and having a bit of fresh air in between.
Nice, sounds good. All right.
And it's a good chance to look at my mailbox.
Good. So no continued business, no new business. We are adjourned. See you soon.